Okay, this week is going to be a huge week, and it may not be because of what you think. No, we don't have the Fed. Yes, we do have Powell that spoke today, but nothing came out of that in any kind of significant fashion. We don't have much economic data. We do have some, and we'll go over that here in this video, but it's all about Nvidia earnings. And you might ask, why is Nvidia so important? Nvidia is not the huge topic of conversation at this point. Yes, people are heavily invested in Nvidia, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the shebang, okay? If you've watched this channel for any time at all, you understand how important AI is to our markets. Nvidia is the central command center for AI, for lack of a better analogy. It's like the brain with in regards to AI. I mean, if Nvidia slows down, the whole operation for AI is gonna take a big back burner. And let me tell you, there is a lot of excess valuation in Microsoft and Google and Amazon, and I don't know why I'm slapping my fingers, but it's that important, okay? All your big tech has benefited from the AI, for lack of a better word again, revolution. I think we're in the very early phase, and maybe it has gotten a little bit too far extended. I will share with you my expectations for Nvidia earnings, what Wall Street's expectations are, and where the problem spot could be for Nvidia earnings. Now, Tom Lee just said yesterday, basically whatever happens with Nvidia, you're probably going to see a broadening out of our markets. And we'll explain exactly why that is here in this video. Do me a quick favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That is all I ask, and these videos are free 99. Thank you for doing that, and let's get started. So first up, we have Nvidia earnings. Now, the estimate is about 26.7 billion of top line revenue. EPS estimate is about $5.63 per share or so. I'm sure Nvidia is going to at least meet expectations. The question is, meeting expectations, is that good enough to send the stock higher? That's something I struggle with. Because let's face it, Nvidia recently sure fell into the 750 range. You're now back in the 900s, about $930 per share or so. I don't know if a meet is good enough for Nvidia. That probably causes a sell-off. Now, judging on what we have heard from other quote-unquote AI semiconductor companies, it really is a mixed bag. Whether you're looking at ASML, TSMC, Broadcom, AMD, Intel, some of those earnings were okay and good by some measures. Some of those earnings make you kind of raise your eyebrow and say, how alive is the AI trade? And that's why you did see some selling in Nvidia during this period of time just about a month ago. Now, Nvidia is a central focus for investors because think about it like this. Nvidia is the brains of the operation here. Nvidia is the muscle of the AI revolution. If you think about all of the excess valuation that has been assigned to a Microsoft, to a Meta, to a Google, or an Amazon, based on this expectation of continued strength in AI, if Nvidia misses, God forbid, well, that has big implications for the path of AI ahead. Thus would have a very negative impact on the rest of your big tech names, which coincidentally have benefited the most from this AI revolution. I don't know if we can call it an AI revolution. Definitely in the markets, it has been an AI revolution. And those big tech names would be hurt the most if this AI revolution takes longer than expected. Now, here's the key with Nvidia. Nvidia actually tends to sell off before or after earnings every single time. Okay, ever since Nvidia started doing well, this was back in 2023 or so. You could say this earnings specifically around, well, specific day was May 25th, 2023. That put Nvidia, that put AI on everyone's radar. And people have gotten more and more convinced of this, over the past year. Well, Nvidia actually sold off after this first earnings. After you obviously rallied after earnings, right? The next couple of days after, you actually sold off about 9%. And that was the first earnings that really shocked investors. Now, following the next earnings after that, Nvidia, well, rallied on earnings at least a little bit, about 3% the day before earnings. And then you were kind of flat the next day. I don't know if you guys remember this. Nvidia was up 10%, ended up actually closing barely positive. Well, you did indeed proceed to sell off about 20% following that earnings. This earnings right here, November of 2023, Nvidia just outright sold off after earnings. You sold off about 11% or so. Last earnings, what happened? Nvidia sold off before earnings, about 10%, and that gave Nvidia enough wiggle room, if you will, in the valuation for the stock to move higher following earnings. So what tends to happen is you either see a sell-off before earnings and then just a straight-up rally and really no sell-off afterwards, or you tend to see Nvidia do good. Most of the time it does good after earnings. Sometimes it does not much after earnings, but 9 times out of 10, every time over the last 4 quarters, you have seen a sell-off either before or afterwards. So going with that general logic, you will probably get some selling in markets in the beginning of this upcoming week, maybe coming tomorrow on Tuesday. Wednesday is going to be a time where a lot of investors are going to be nervous. If you have a large position in Nvidia, you're probably going to want to grab some hedges, just given the kind of mixed bag we've seen in some of your AI and semiconductor earnings so far. Now, if Nvidia does very well, I think given the stock sitting close to all-time highs, sure, could you rally to $1,000? But I'm not expecting any kind of huge, like 20+% rally, no matter what happens with Nvidia. I actually think the most likely outcome is probably a meet on the current quarter's expectations and a slight guide down for next quarter. That is because expectations for Nvidia's next quarter are way high. Now, forward-looking guidance is the most important thing for Nvidia, really for any other company, at least over the past couple of years. The expectations are crazy, though. Next quarter revenue is expected between $28 and $30 billion. That would be some insane growth. And you're starting to see the law of large numbers that might start to work against Nvidia. Things have just been so good for so long. Maybe this next upcoming quarter is going to be a harder one to beat. And I do think this could set the markets up in kind of a rocky situation overall. Now, coming this week, you have a lot of Fed speakers: Fed Barr, Fed Waller, Fed Jefferson, and Fed Bostic on Monday. You do get Fed Bostic twice at all different times throughout the day. So I'm not going to go through each individual Fed speaker and when they speak. I recommend you guys keep this up on your computer, on your phone, wherever you trade at. It is tradingeconomics.com/calendar. It is a free tool. You never have to pay anything. And it keeps you up to date on what data is coming out, when it's coming out, Fed speakers, anything that you need to know as far as data is concerned. Now, Tuesday's CPI will be coming out for Canada. You have Fed Barkin, Fed Waller, Fed Williams, Fed Bostic, and Fed Barr again on Tuesday. And then you have Fed Bostic, Fed Collins, and Fed Mester as well Tuesday after hours. This is at 7 p.m. So lots of Fed speakers this week. That's obvious. I mean, Fed speakers are really your biggest catalyst for Monday and Tuesday. Now, again, if Nvidia sells off, you've seen a 2% sell off on Friday. If you do get that, pre-earnings sell off, that's definitely going to affect the markets the most, I would imagine, because we kind of already have an idea of what the Fed's going to say. But we did get that CPI report that came out last week, and not a lot of Fed speakers have had time to actually comment on that. So if they have positive things to say, that could definitely be good. On Wednesday, you are going to get existing home sales month over month and just straight up for the month of April. And then the FOMC minutes that come out at 2 p.m. People make a big deal out of this. It usually doesn't move the markets. It can, at least like when it first comes out, but after the markets realize it's old information, you don't tend to see much of a reaction. Now, Thursday, you're not going to have much. You are going to have S&P Global Composite PMI, S&P Global Manufacturing PMI, and S&P Global Services PMI that will be coming out, and the Kansas Fed Composite Index and Kansas Fed Manufacturing Index, as well as Fed Bostic and inflation coming out for Japan. Now, that data comes out at 9:45 in the morning, so 15 minutes after the markets open. And I should mention you have initial jobless claims and Chicago Fed National Activity Index that also comes out at 8:30 in the morning. Now, on Friday, you will get durable goods orders month over month. That's actually expected to fall quite a bit to 0.3% month over month. Last month, you came in at 2.6%. So that is definitely a potentially problematic catalyst. I think the markets are probably going to be reacting most to Nvidia at this point, but definitely still something to watch. And speaking of earnings, you do have other important earnings as well, like Macy's, Lowe's, and AutoZone pre-market Tuesday, Toll Brothers Tuesday and after hours, Target, TJX, Analog Devices Wednesday pre-market, and then Nvidia, your big dog, Wednesday and after hours, as well as Snowflake, Elf, and a couple other names, Deckers Brands, Thursday and after hours, Ross, Workday, and then you do have Ralph Lauren, TD Bank. Not exactly sure why they're reporting so late in this earnings cycle. They typically report a lot sooner, so kind of raising my eyebrow for that one a little bit. But we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, Nvidia is going to carry the brunt of the weight here, but Target can be another important one to tell us how is the consumer doing. And that's really the number one thing that I'm watching for right now. If the consumer is starting to weaken at a faster pace than the markets are expecting, recession odds will rise and stocks will fall, no matter if that means more cuts from the Fed. So again, like Tom Lee said yesterday, if Nvidia comes in and they meet expectations, beat expectations, then you're going to likely see a broadening out of our markets. This confirmation that AI is here to stay. Market participants, according to Tom Lee, may look to seek out other areas to benefit from this. Now, I think personally, again, it's going to be hard for Nvidia to impress investors given the high, lofty expectations that you have for Nvidia, especially following this rally from the 750s back up to the 930s. If Nvidia was still trading in the 750s, this would be a totally different video, or at least this segment of the video, because you would be much better priced for an inline earnings or inline guidance. I think the problem area could actually be guidance. And yes, the law of large numbers is working against Nvidia, but when a stock like Nvidia is so important to the markets, has the law of large numbers starting to work against it, you can kind of see how stock trading after a couple week rally could be due for a pullback, and that could be negative for the broader markets. Now, if Nvidia misses on guidance, man, yeah, you might just want to take the next week or two off, because that would be a pretty rough next week or two for market. But again, these are only my expectations, and if I were to say, you probably get an inline report across the board. You probably get inline EPS, well, maybe better than expected EPS. You could get inline revenue and likely inline guidance between $28 and $30 billion. Anything higher than $30 billion, I'll be pretty surprised, and that will be just outright impressive. Anything lower than 28, I wouldn't say I would be shocked, but I think Wall Street would. And I would say overall, I'm pretty bullish on Nvidia, but not in the 930s. I would be more bullish on Nvidia if we had a sell-off heading into earnings. But again, only my take. Let me know what you think about this information down below in the comment section. As far as the broader markets, if Nvidia misses or meets expectations, maybe it's a low meet, right? Maybe Nvidia guides for like 28.1 billion instead of 30 billion. Wall Street's not going to like that either, even though it met expectations. And you could probably see the markets pull back quite a bit. Wouldn't surprise me if the S&P 500 falls back to this 50-day moving average. That would be a decline of about 3%. Honestly, it could do that in a day, And according to JP Morgan, if you fall under that 50-day moving average, that's where you got to start looking at some extended downside, potentially targeting this area between the 185 to 475 level. And that would be, maybe 10% downside from here. I do think, judging off the valuations of the S&P and the NASDAQ, it's going to be pretty hard to get some kind of huge rally for the markets. That's definitely not the base case scenario, even if Nvidia does vary. I think the odds are starting to get stacked against the bulls a little bit. If there is an area that will benefit from whatever happens with Nvidia, as long as they don't miss, it's probably just the broadening out of our markets. The Russell 2000 still looks pretty good on a technical basis, still 10% below all-time highs, and that's where I would want to put my money. Individual stocks, the Russell 2000, energy, some of these other areas. So let me know what you think about this down below in the comment section. Hit the like button as well as subscribe to the channel. And last but certainly not least, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.